welcome to our Careers in Public History webinar tonight. My name is Professor Volker Janssen, and we want to talk with our alumni, our successful graduates, about careers in public history. What we want to do here, we begin with an introduction of the panel members. We will ask them to tell us about their jobs, their careers, and then we'll go a little back in their life stories and have them tell us a little bit about their path from college to career. We'll then discuss their work environment, the kind of working conditions that they're dealing with or that they enjoy. And then we will discuss specifically the way in which their BA and their MA work at Cal State Fullerton prepared them for their work. We will then have time for some final advice and some suggestions, and of course also many of your questions. The whole thing will probably take about 90 minutes, maybe a little less, so I hope you can stick around for all of this. Let me quickly check whether there's anyone else here who has an audio problem. Okay, one more advice to my to the participants, not the and this is not to those of you who speak on the panel, but to the audience. Please disable your microphone. So I hear someone typing very furiously, and so whoever's currently working on the keyboard very hard is broadcasting this. So check up top. If you are one of the speakers, have your microphone on. If you are one of the audience members, have your microphone switched off. So if we're ready to go, we'll get started. So let me first introduce our panel members. We have four fantastic public history career examples with us today. One is Jennifer Kyle, here in Southern California. Then we have Nicole Roten, who is out in Hawaii. Christine Shook joins us from the Bay Area, and Colleen Davis, whose audio is currently not working and who I hope we get to have us join, is located in Los Angeles. So maybe we start from the left and then move to the right. Jennifer, introduce yourself, say hi, and tell us very briefly what you do.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm in Newport Beach at the Island Museum. I support the day-to-day efforts of our site and in integrating our history to the community with docent training and education programming.
Very good. Thank you, Jennifer. Nicole, introduce yourself, please. Okay, Nicole's connection in Hawaii is a little spotty, so we will move to Christine. Christine, please introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening. I'm Christine Shook, and I work for the Wells Fargo Family and Business History Center. We do genealogies for some of Wells Fargo's ultra-high net worth customers.
Very good. Christine, you may want to turn up your volume because you come in at very low levels.
Okay, is that better?
So I hope that will help. I'm sure we'll get feedback on the right here in our chat if that continues to be a problem. Let's see whether we can get Nicole back on. Nicole, are you there? Okay. Maybe we can have Colleen back on. And Colleen is also not there. Well, that is a bit of a problem because I was hoping we would have both speakers at least introduce themselves.
I'm back. This is Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. You're just in time for an introduction.
Wonderful. Okay, my name is Nicole Roten. I graduated Fullerton 2009. Since then, I've been working for the Defense Prisoner of War Missing in Action Accounting Agency. That's a defense agency. We are a joint military task force, so all branches of the military, including civilians, tasked by Congress to provide the fullest possible accounting for missing servicemen from past conflicts. So that would include World War II, Korea, and the Vietnam War. So my job is a World War II historian to conduct research to identify promising cases to take to the field for investigation, which includes interviewing potential witnesses, conducting site surveys with a metal detector to find potential lost sites for ultimate recovery. So we present all of the evidence to the command. If it's approved, then a future team would go out and conduct an excavation to recover remains and identify them in the laboratory, which is based in Honolulu, Hawaii, on Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. Once they are identified, then the family is notified. If they accept the identification, then the remains are returned for burial according to the wishes of next of kin.
Okay, thank you. Fantastic. Now, Colleen still has some audio issues, I believe. So I'm going to move on and have you guys talk a little bit more about your job. Now, we heard a bit more from Nicole about the way her job works, but tell our listeners, how great is it really to be a public historian? Jennifer, do you want to start?
Absolutely. I had my training with traditional methods and classroom environment, and the curriculum that I received about questioning methodology and traditional narratives really came into play. The community has its own narrative, and so daily we have guests who report different alternative histories, I'd like to call them, of personal odes of experiences, but also they challenge our consensus at times, and so it's very much a collaborative work. We try to listen to our community and identify alternative perspectives and use those resources from the public to do additional work and make sure our narrative is as accurate as possible. So I would say all the theory I learned in the university setting of how to approach varying ideas really has helped us engineer as accurate of a portrayal as we can for the local
Jennifer,
group.
Jennifer, if I can interrupt, can you give me an example of what you call alternative accounts?
Absolutely. So we have some local history that was written by a former judge. The title of the book is called Baldy Balboa, and so in this narrative it really paints a portrait of our founders in a very interesting light. It's supposed to be this entertainment in a way. So people come in believing this book is factual, and they tend to correct docents at times, thinking that what they've read and heard is accurate. And so we respect their opinions, but something that hasn't been researched properly and cannot be factually checked is not history. It's folklore. And so it's part of my responsibilities in training docents is to make sure that they know our community history well and know how to respect our visitors' beliefs and offer them alternative views. And so that's really been a day-to-day situation, where we get people who have just varied perspectives, and so something that we're working on as a community.
Mm-hmm. So would you say this is a good job? Is this something that you recommend to someone, or would you turn to your to those who follow your study path and say, stay away from this?
I think if you have an inkling to work with people, it's a wonderful opportunity. Every day has a chance to really implement new programs. I came into this position as an oral historian, and I started a collection as a grad student, and so I gathered their history firsthand, and so I feel very honored to have heard everyone's story in a personal level, and that's how I learned it in many ways. So I would fact check and research the local books on the area, but it was very much a privilege to get to know them this way, and I think if you're going to work with the public, you just have to learn to know your audience and expect anything really. And there's positions that are research only, but this day-to-day opportunity requires a lot of people skills.
Christine, I could imagine that your job also requires a good amount of people skills. Do you like your job?
I love my job. It's been really, really great. I've been with Wells for about a year, and while we do a lot of interface with public, we will go to clients' houses and present their family history to them. You can imagine that is a pretty personal thing to go do, is to come into your house and tell you, this is who your family is. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's a really great, fun job. I'm always learning things. I get to be creative and making real connections across generations.
Now, I could imagine that in your job you do the family histories of, let's say, big investors or people with big portfolios at Wells Fargo.
Yeah, we do family histories for ultra high net worth clients, and what they say is the bar is usually about $30 million or above, but it does vary.
Okay.
We do, depending on what we're coming into. Like next week, we're doing founding families of St. Louis, and so that has different levels of wealth among them, but they're families that are important to St. Louis. So doing it in conjunction
Do you get to
with
travel?
the public library. Yeah, I do. This is the second time I'll be going to St. Louis. Went to fabulous Minneapolis, and is going to Florida pretty soon. And so yeah, we get to do a fair amount of traveling.
Is it difficult to tell these people who you know are very, very wealthy, tell them something about their history that may not be something they want to hear? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, there definitely are times where you have hard facts that come up. Different, like slavery owners, for example, would be the one that a lot of people would think of, as well as we've had families where there's been suicides and things like that. And it really is, you don't lie about it, you never lie about it. And you just go forward and you present it the best that you can and say, this is part of the past, this is part of what made your family what you are today.
Colleen, I think, can hear us now. Let's see whether we can hear Colleen. Colleen? Okay, so Colleen can hear us, but we can't hear Colleen. So let's then continue and ask Nicole. Nicole, you like your job, I assume?
Yes, I absolutely love my job. It's not as, let me explain. I love it when we're in the field because this is when I actually see all of my hard work paying off. And it's also the place that I do the most research because the office environment when I'm here at headquarters is highly political, it's very dramatic, high stress environment, so really not conducive to reading and writing, which is what we do, right? So that can be very frustrating, but I've just learned different ways of doing, being able to cope with it. But the pros definitely outweigh the cons for me. So I am happy to stick around as long as I get off the island every now and then to do what I feel is my real job. But I am very happy with it.
You get to travel quite a bit, right?
Yes, I do. I travel. Total amount within a year would be about 4 months, but that's broken up at 45 days at a time.
Oh, wow. So where have you gone?
Most of my work has been primarily in Europe, so Germany, a lot in Germany. We had the most aircraft losses during World War II in Germany, and we have a really good relationship with the German government. So a lot of work is done in Germany, also Italy, which is one of my favorites. What we call Benelux, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. And then I've done a little bit of work in the Pacific in Myanmar or Burma, which was fascinating. And it looks like my job is going to be shifting a little bit, where I'll be working more within the Pacific. So that'll be interesting. That similar to Christine, I am constantly learning new things, and that's one of the things I love about it. So I'm looking forward to the challenge of working with a whole different problem set, and yeah, so we'll see what happens.
Is this a limited position? I mean, did they give you a limited number of years, or do you see this as a long-term position?
It's long-term at this point. When I first started, I came in as in a fellowship funded by Department of Energy, and so I was a fellow for about a year and a half, and then I hired on with the federal government. So I'm a federal employee. It would be really hard for them to fire me. I'd have to steal a lot of money. So I plan to be around for a while. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds really fantastic. Colleen, can you hear us now and talk to us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, fantastic. Yes, thank you. Everybody, welcome Colleen Davis, who has not yet had a chance to introduce herself. So why don't you tell us about your job, what you do, and is this a good career to get into?
Sure. So thanks for inviting me today. It's really fun to have an opportunity to talk to students because it wasn't that long ago that I was a student. So my job, I work for a private consulting firm. Primarily our clients are government agencies, federal, state, or local, sometimes project proponents. And my job really has two components. There's the historic part of my job, which involves environmental impact analysis, so helping clients comply with the environmental impact laws, California Environmental Quality Act or a National Environmental Policy Act, or Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. So those laws and regulations consider historic resources or historic built environment and archaeology to be part of the environment, just like air quality or biology. And so when projects require government approvals, they typically also require that the environmental impacts of those projects be studied. And so that's where the kind of historic part of my job comes in, where I'm evaluating the historic significance or lack of historic significance of built environment resources. So that's sort of half of my job. And the other half of my job has to do with project management. So I do a lot of project management as well. So it's kind of a balance of those two aspects, kind of those two parts of my brain.
Do you do field work?
I do field work less and less as I progress in my career. So I used to do more, I do less now. And so my field work sometimes involves driving around South Los Angeles looking at buildings, and it also sometimes involves cruising around places like Southeast Montana looking at built environment resources.
Okay, so you also get to travel, or people in your kind of work get to travel?
Yes, I travel.
Do you like
Not as much as some of the other speakers, though.
Yeah. Do you like this job?
I do. Well, like all jobs, most days I like it. Some days I feel frustrated, but yes, I do like it.
It sounds like you need to really know the law. Was that something that came easy to you?
It did come easy to me because this is not my first career. I'm a bit of a career changer. I've had several careers under my belt, and one of my previous careers was I was a litigation paralegal. So I worked in law firms for quite a few years. So I had some on-the-job training in that kind of legal thinking. But yes, there's a lot of compliance with the law, and so you have to be very careful as you write that you are addressing the elements of the law or the regulation, so that things get approved, and sometimes things get challenged through the court. So I sometimes have cases that are challenged in court.
So are you then an expert witness in the courtroom?
I have not been an expert witness in the courtroom. Some of my colleagues from time to time have, but I have not myself been.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Colleen, you gave us a perfect segue to our next sort of range of questions that describe your path from college to career. You said you worked as a paralegal before, and then did you then come back to get your history degree?
Yes. So my undergraduate degree, and I got my undergraduate degree in that kind of traditional or standard time of life, between 18 and, in my case, 25. But I got an undergraduate degree in English, and then I had, as I mentioned, several careers. I worked for a nonprofit. I worked as a paralegal. I also worked in film production and post-production. So I've done a number of things before I went back to grad school as a grown-up with a small child. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Christine, why did you choose history as first your field of study and then your career?
Well, actually, it's funny because when I first graduated high school, I was going to be a chef. So,
oh, someone's cutting out. Okay, Christine's audio is down. She may not know this, so I'm going to quickly let her know.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Okay,
sorry,
so you said you wanted to be a chef originally.
Yeah, I actually started off, that was the direction I was going, and so I took some courses in that and decided that really wasn't what I wanted to do. Loved cooking, but prefer not to do it professionally. So I actually took an applied psychology course, and that tested me on a whole bunch of different things and really helped me identify my real passion. And it really made sense once I got to it being history, because I was raised in San Juan Capistrano, which is a mission town, and that has always been a very big part of my life. And so and then every time we went on a family vacation, like my sisters and brothers would come back talking about the fashion and different things like that, and I would be spouting history at 8 years old. So it really it kind of made sense once I was able to discover that.
Mm-hmm. Nicole, did you always want to be a history geek? Did you always
No.
was that your original idea?
No, I didn't have an original idea. I knew that I had to go to college and get a degree so that I could have some kind of job that paid more than minimum wage. And so what happened was I spent too many years at community college, and when I had to make a move or decide what I wanted to do, I picked history because I always had excellent professors, and it was what intrigued me the most. I had the professors that said it's not about memorizing dates and names, it's about concepts, and I got really lucky in terms of the people that I got to work with, that I got to explore a lot of fascinating topics, and so that's why I picked history. And what happened is I got my bachelor's degree and got a pretty good paying job at a corporate cosmetics firm, and I absolutely hated it. It was not meaningful to me at all. So I went back for the MA, again, inspired by professors that said that's what I should do. And so I worked for a ghostwriter. I worked full time throughout college. And when I finally finished my thesis, I no longer liked my job working for the writer, and I wanted to make a move, but I wanted it to be something that would start my career. So I didn't want to just work anywhere. I definitely wanted to do something within the field. I thought I would be teaching or a researcher, and this is right at the time when the economy was really bad. But I just believed that I could find a meaningful job doing something that I loved that would pay me lots of money. And again, I got really lucky with that.
This is an encouraging story that you actually found this job at a time when unemployment was really, really high, also amongst graduates.
Yes.
Jennifer, I'm going to move on to you here and ask you, did you always want to do history?
No, actually, I had planned to finish business school, and it was through that coursework and researching business history, in fact, that I really was more interested in the organization and in the people of any project we were involved with. But I do want to say, though, fortunately, all that training has come into play with site management and project management. So even the financial aspects with fulfilling strategic plans and understanding our board's lingo has really helped me on site. So I actually have seen a lot of people come in from the business world to do direct a site because boards really like that business background. So although I didn't traditionally go into that field per se, I feel the coursework and training that I received from business school prepared me to manage and operate the day-to-day aspects. So it's really, I find it fortunate that I did find history because it's my true passion, and much more excited to work in this field. But I really find that the background that I had in marketing and finance has helped me shape our own image as a historic society. So it really was a great opportunity.
So what I hear from almost everyone here is that you were thinking of other careers as well. You didn't always want to be in the historic field necessarily, and you all were able to sort of combine skills that you acquired elsewhere in your current positions. So that's really interesting because it also tells everyone in the audience that if you've done something in the past that you were reasonably good at, there are ways in which you can blend and combine that with a career in history. Now, one question that I have for you, and whoever wants to answer this can go first. Did you always know what public history actually was?
I guess this is Christine. I can start. I didn't know. I had no idea what public history was. I got really fortunate. I went to Cal State Fullerton for my undergraduate as well as my graduate. And one of the first classes I took there was with Art Hansen. And of course, he was one of the founders of COF. And he helped, I don't know if he saw something in me or what, but he helped me learn about public history and really helped me discover that that was where I wanted to go.
Anybody else?
This is Colleen. I would agree with that and say I didn't know about public history either. And I would also say that although I didn't have any interest in being a teacher, and I think I thought that careers in history were all about teaching. And so it really took me finding out that people studied buildings and looked at buildings for a living to realize that that there was such a thing as public history, and there was a way to be a historian without being in academia. So yeah, it took me a long time to realize that there was that path.
Hi, this is Jennifer. I also found a similar path by taking the practicum in public history with Dr. Rast my first semester of grad school, and so getting to work at the Brea Museum on an exhibit enlightened me to this alternative path within history, and so I really enjoyed the research and installation process. So I have to credit that course experience to open my eyes to this industry.
Mm-hmm. Nicole, did you actually do an MA in public history?
No, I did not, as emphasis in American history. So it's funny because I haven't really thought about public history since going to school and, talking about theory and the different uses or meanings in history. And I know when I was a student, that was interesting to me that we write our own histories for different purposes, and that's also, I understand that, but it's something that's important to me. Like, who is writing this? What are their influences? These types of things. And in terms of what I do today, it's very interesting. It's very practical, right? So the research that we're doing is to support a specific outcome, which is to identify a crash site or a burial, if we're talking about an infantry loss, these types of things. And so we don't necessarily have to write too much history for the public and have any of these kinds of influences other than fact, 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 and then an analysis, right? So I really enjoy that part because I feel like it's kind of pure. We are definitely having to face the public a little bit more, and I think this is a good thing because the reason that we exist is for the families and groups that are pressuring Congress for us to achieve results. And so that will take on, we've been doing it actually for some years. I just haven't been as involved with it as our East Coast counterparts, but we do what is called family updates. And this is where a family member can attend a conference and we go and brief them on the status of their family member who was killed during the war. And so this is interesting because now you have a specific audience and there's certain things that maybe you don't want to say. You definitely want to be open and transparent, but you definitely have a specific audience. So that'll be interesting going forward. I think that it will still be the style that I really like, which is this is what we know based on this fact, this fact, this fact, and here's our recommendation for going forward. So it's definitely the style of history that I like to work with.
Sounds like you have more of a research position then, compared to, say,
I do.
Maybe, I don't know, Christine's work or maybe Jennifer's position that requires more interaction with the public.
Yeah, my interaction with the public is going to just be with witnesses, so people that observed these events when it happened. It is interesting, though, when I go to Germany and they're, especially in former East Germany or pretty close to the line, if we're there coinciding with some sort of anniversary, and there are a lot of them for World War II, we draw media attention anywhere we go. And so I often get these questions from the media, the German media, saying, so how do you, like, what does this area and this specific date signify for you, and why is it important for the United States, and why is it important for Germany? And these very interesting questions, because it seems that there's this generation that's trying to retell in a different way, not meaning that it's not accurate in the retelling, but just reshape the history that has been told in the past. But it's hard for me because I don't necessarily want to be a part of that. I'm not there. That's what I'm not there to do that. It's not my mission, and that's for them. That's however you want to tell this for your generation and your time. That's up to you. But so it's an interesting position for me to be in.
You remind me of my time as a public radio reporter in Germany, where on one occasion I covered the local fire department's work on digging out old World War II bombs which are still so densely buried underground that you're not allowed to dig deeper than 4 feet in a city like Hamburg without getting the fire department's permission. So that's, I guess, this history from the other side, literally from the bottom up. The other thing I noticed is that all 4 of you really understand how personal history is. Do you have maybe anecdotes that tell us something about how maybe our textbook understanding of history can clash quite violently with the way that people take history personally?
This is Nicole. I mean, I definitely. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, Colleen and then Nicole.
Okay. So I have been working on a project I mentioned earlier in Southeast Montana, and the history in Southeast Montana is very personal because there is a very rich Native history there, and there's also a very rich history of European settlers, and it's quite interesting to see those different histories, which have sometimes been in conflict, coming together in the wake of this particular project, which both Native people and descendants of European settlers oppose. So it has, they have had what they previously saw as parallel and maybe conflictual histories now coming together to help them in framing their opposition to a project. It's interesting.
Nicole?
I was listening to Colleen, so I might have lost my train of thought, but definitely it's personal when we're talking to witnesses. So these are typically men or women who were very young at the time of the war, and we can be in one area and talk to 5 different people, and within those 5 people, their experience of either side, the Americans or the Germans or whatever it is at play in the area that we are, they can experience it totally differently. So that's always been interesting to me, even when I was a student, talking about history from the bottom up, and how our memory is very personal in the way that we understand things. It definitely comes down to our own perceptions based on our own experiences. But the one thing that I think has been really helpful for me is the training that I had in conducting oral history interviews with subjects that may be at risk. Because in my line of work, it's the U.S. military. They don't necessarily, they're not as concerned with the subject being at risk, being at a certain age. We're talking about 75, 80, discussing traumatic events, these types of things. And so understanding that when you're talking to certain age groups about things that happened in the past and what that can be like for them, I definitely am very grateful for the experience that I had conducting oral history interviews. And that's not to say that you have to have that experience. I work with some, they're called human-ters, the human intelligence. Basically their real job when they're not stationed with us is interrogation. But even then, they have really good people skills, and so they know how to sit down with someone and build rapport and basically have a conversation instead of an interrogation. So, but I'm definitely very conscious of how certain things affect us, and I'm grateful for my time. So.
Okay. I wanted to follow up with some of you and find out how easy or difficult it was to get that job. We heard from Nicole. She was lucky to get that position at a time when the job market was really was really down. Colleen, we know, had worked a couple of other jobs that sort of gave her the preparation to work in that field. How easy or difficult was it for you, Christine, to get that job at Wells Fargo?
This job, well, this actually wasn't my first job out of college.
Mm-hmm.
My first job, I was actually working at the Mission San Capistrano while I was going to school, and for the first year after I graduated, applying for different places. I was in the preservation department of the mission, and they already had a pretty solid team, so I was looking to grow myself professionally, and I applied to a lot of places. I applied to a lot of places, had a lot of interviews before I found a job up in Tahoe at the Tahoe Maritime Museum in charge of exhibits and collections. I was up there for about 3.5 years before, again, deciding that I needed to develop myself and look for something new. And I was really fortunate in that one of my old schoolmates, actually, Bethany Gerard, already worked with Wells Fargo and knew that they were looking for somebody, and they were looking for somebody with technical experience. One of the things that I had done at Tahoe was to create interactive iPad displays. And so I had in-depth knowledge of how to do that, and Wells Fargo was looking at how to bring those kind of displays into their family history presentations. So she connected me with one of the senior historians in Wells, and I went through, I did a little bit of contract work for them for a few months. Then they hired me on as an independent contractor coming into the office. It was supposed to be for a 1-year period, but within 2 months they hired me officially. So I'm looking at my first year anniversary actually next month.
Well, congratulations.
Yep.
Jennifer, what was it like for you?
So my starting point was creating that oral history project. Now it's going to be almost 3 years, I guess, that started. And so I went to the community hoping to help them create a new part of their archive. And so I stayed active with that group throughout my studies, and upon graduation evaluated. I had a couple opportunities elsewhere, but my heart was really with this community, and so sat down with a few of their board members, and it was at that point we decided to really get the program continuing and develop more of the plans that they had that I should be with them. And it's worked out well, since staying in California has brought on a new responsibility as the Southwest Oral History Association California delegate. So I actually connect our oral history collection with other sites and evaluate and try to bring in more resources. So I just came back from the national group here this past week, and we're trying to utilize new technology with our collection, and so and we'll be here in California next year. So for those of you who want to network and grow and learn more about oral history methods that relate back to public history, which a few of us have mentioned, we'll be here in Long Beach, so don't need to travel as far.
Oh, fantastic. Very good.
Which is great, but it's really truly that internship opportunity, and so I really want to share it with students. I've spoken with colleagues elsewhere who are directing sites in Orange County that they were just on a volunteer basis initially, and through that they were ID'd for potential to work on site formally. So I think that's really the best thing to do, is get academic credit if possible, and if nothing else, just to start building your network, is to find a society or organization that you might be interested in and make yourself available to them.
That's really good advice. And you did that, I presume, during your studies already.
Correct. So I had done some work with Brand Museum initially, and so I really enjoyed working with their director, and so I knew I always wanted to be a part of some kind of site management and specifically with exhibitions or oral history collections, and learned past perfect software at the Brea Museum, was exposed to it for the first time. And so getting to know those technical skills, since museum collections are all done differently, but fortunately Balboa Museum uses the same software system, and so been able to use that background and manage our collections there as well.
So what I hear from all of you is a real learning curve where you pick up a lot of different skills and at times connections, experiences that help you sort of get on your specific path. And you all have very specific paths that I think no student who enters the public history field could easily imagine. I do want to know, are there things you did during your time at college, either during the BA or the MA, that you look back on and you think, that was definitely a mistake, I learned nothing from that? No warnings? Colleen, how about you? Was there anything?
I'm really struggling
Okay.
to come up with something, and I can't think of anything.
Okay, good. That's good. Christine, were there things that you did during college, either the BA or the MA, where you thought, well, in retrospect, that really hasn't paid off at all?
I'm struggling to think about that too.
Well, you know what? That's okay. Okay, you know what? We don't need to force it. If you found it overall rewarding, that's perfectly fine. Let me ask you a little bit then about your work environment. I wonder whether you all work with historians, and if not, what do people think of your degree? Do they misunderstand what it means to be an historian? I could imagine Colleen working with people that are not necessarily historians.
So some of my colleagues, the folks that are on the same team with me, have degrees in history, architectural history, historic preservation. So even within our team, there are differences in our training, and we do see that differences in training and orientation does make for differences in perspective towards the work. But also, I think as you're alluding to, I also work with
audio went down.
Are trained in other disciplines, also colleagues. And so I would say it's a mix. Sometimes people who aren't don't have the same training as me find it really fascinating and really enjoy the reading the results of my work and my colleagues' work. And in some cases, other people just think it's really dumb. Why in the world do we care about old buildings? So it's a mix.
Christine, I could imagine that at Wells Fargo, there's not too many historians.
It's funny because the floor I sit on, it's mostly historians, but yeah, and normally there's not that many. Yeah, in the Family and Business History Center, we are actually one of the very few lesser known branches of Wells Fargo. So people are always really blown away when I tell them what I do. It's kind of funny to see their eyes like get really wide, like a bank does that. But yeah, we do a lot with account representatives and various people like that. But really, the people that I encounter most at my work are the team of historians I work with. We have in total in San Francisco, there's 4 of us, soon to be 5. and there's 2 in New York. And then we have contractors that we work with across the country and actually internationally as well to go out to the field and find things for us. I think probably more relative to this question would be my work in Tahoe, where I worked as a historian in a place that is not known for its history. And that was, I worked in a maritime museum where everybody there pretty much fancies themselves some sort of historian and about boats. And they all do have a very good knowledge of it, but you wind up dealing with a lot of gatekeepers. And so getting them to open up and share that history can be a little bit of a challenge. But
Nicole, do you work with historians mostly?
I do. Well, we have quite a few historians doing the type of work that I'm doing, but I also work with so many other people: anthropologists, archaeologists, planners, military. I'm not even sure what most of them do. And so in terms of the anthropologists, archaeologists, they all understand the importance of having historians do this type of work. We also have what are called analysts. They don't have a background in history, but they're doing the same thing that we're doing. I would argue that historians, at least among the ones I work with, are much better analysts. And that really has to do with the research problems that we have and understanding that, of course, we don't have a database of every plane that crashed ever, and we don't know where every one of the 83,000 missing individuals are. That's why they're still missing, right? So, but these are things that are really hard to explain to a general or a colonel who just wants hard numbers, and they don't want to hear about the caveats, and it just looks like we don't know what we're doing. So there definitely is definitely some people within the organization that don't understand what we do or why we're there, and then there are also those who know why we're there and appreciate the work that we're doing.
Jennifer, do you sometimes get blowback from residents who may resent the fact that you have knowledge of things that they don't, even though they are maybe 50 years older than you?
It can be challenging with some of our first generation docents since the society started 15 years ago, and so at times they feel that their knowledge would be superior since they have resided in that community and have maybe their 3rd generation by this point, but they've come to a point where they see my methodology and we understand why we have had differences in our history of the area, and we've learned to work together, and so most residents respect the background, and the people who I work with tend to have like a library science or sometimes some similar background. Even with business, I feel like we connect, and so we're able to maintain that mutual understanding. But certainly there's people whose only connection to the island is the frozen banana, thinking where the Arrested Development community comes to life. And, we have to contest pop culture at times, and so there's some varying thoughts, and so as fun as it is to hear their stories, I still want to delve in the real history of the area, and we've been able to account for that. So, but make it interesting, of course. So that's part of the interactive phase, is making the exhibits multi-generational. So include the frozen banana at times if need be, which we have. So whatever to get them there to understand their own history.
I think I heard from all of you quite a bit about the skills that you developed outside your major. Computer skills, software programs, practical skills, in the case of Lake Tahoe, some legal knowledge. What kind of skills did you learn in your major or in your grad program that proved really important? I think we heard a good amount about oral history. Are there other skills that you learned in your grad program outside of oral history that you felt really useful in your careers?
This is Colleen. I've actually heard
Yes.
two other folks mention this, so I want to really underline it because it was something that I made a note of as I was thinking about our conversation tonight, and that has to do with asking the right questions, because I think that's something that we are really trained as historians to do in our programs is what is an appropriate historical question, and that is something that I use every day on the historical side of my job, but I also use it in project management, thinking about what the right question to ask is. What is the real issue? What is the right question? And then also, and this gets to the research part of things, is knowing what information is necessary to answer the question. And that is relevant, as I mentioned, on both the historical side of my job, but also on the program management or the project management side of my job, because I often find that it's really important that the people that you work with give you the information that you need to answer the questions, but it's also very important to know what the right information that you need to give for the people above you on the food chain so that they can make the appropriate decisions. And that is all, I think, training that we get as historians to ask what are the relevant questions and what information is necessary to answer them.
Very good.
Well, with our historical society, we've recently updated the website, and so the technical background in graphic design and web management really helps us visualize how it should be laid out and integrating the online archive. So I'm grateful for that training that helped me have that visual understanding of how the public learns and retrieves information.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, I think it's a good idea to explore some of those classes at times.
Well, for all of you, this comes too late, but we now actually have a new concentration in digital history, and we have a new public historian who is skilled in digital humanities and digital history. So future graduates will benefit from that and may be able to pick things up during their coursework as well.
Great.
Okay, I wanted to show you the BA goals and the MA goals. This is what we currently put out there and say, this is what we'd like you to accomplish during your studies. When you look at this now, after a couple of years or a year in your current position, does any of this look like something that relates to what you do on the job?
This is Nicole. I would say absolutely in terms of critical thinking and analysis. I mean, that's key to my job. Those are the main skills that you need to be successful in what we do. And some people don't have that. And so my training, I guess I take it for granted because I also think that just most people should have critical thinking, but I think that I owe a lot of that to my training and my education. So again, critical thinking, analysis, and then also identifying what happens next, what other questions. I really liked, Colleen, what you said about asking the right questions. After you've conducted all your research and you provided your analysis, what questions did that bring up and what questions are left unanswered? So that's definitely what I deal with every day, and it's essential to what we're doing.
Thank you. Any other ideas about how these goals relate to what you actually do?
Yeah, this is Christine, and can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I thought I lost you for a second. Yeah, I think the develop skills to gain historical knowledge and just through research projects and just having that basic historical knowledge has been really, really helpful for us because what we do when we go through our family's histories, we don't just go through and say, your father was a farmer or your great-grandfather was a farmer here and you know they had 7 kids and blah blah blah. What we do is we tie in their history to the larger historical themes and help them see how they're connected to bigger history.
Ah,
And
great.
just every day we're pulling in those different kind of things. It's like I couldn't do the job without that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, so basically you're trying to create really special biographies, but biography in the best sense where you can see a bigger history through a person's story.
hmm Definitely.
Fantastic.
I look at it, I kind of,
Hello?
oh yeah, sorry. I kind of think of it like how a lot of books, when you read them, biographies, they will talk about the one character, but tie that into around what's happening in the world around them, so you understand that character better. And so
Hmm.
that's what we
Hmm.
do a lot with the family's histories, and it makes it so much more impactful for people, and it makes a
Hmm.
bigger connection both their own family history and to the greater history overall.
Hmm. Hmm. When I look at these goals and I think of the things you said tonight, I have to say it's nice to see such a solid match between what you actually do, effectively communicate historical knowledge and understanding orally or in written form. You all do that in one way or another. Um, uh, most of you do, all of you do research really. Um, and you all have to apply your historical context knowledge and your critical thinking skills. So I think you guys are really sort of a perfect example of how history is really meaningful out in the fields. Um, I would like to hear final lessons or advice that you could give to the audience. The live audience tonight is sadly not very large, but I'm hoping that the recording will spread and that the rumor mill will spread the fact that this is really a fantastic group of people to listen to. So, what advice do you have, and what lessons have you learned that you want to share with current history students?
I would like to share the importance of the community groups of the student organizations. I feel that having been active in Phi Alpha Theta and the history groups on campus, European Studies Society, that we planned events, we did project management together, we explored networks, we went to conferences, and now I have that network post-grad that when I have questions about methodology or a resource, it really helped me connect with these students, and so it gave me some experience, but really it deepened my appreciation for practicing history already and in a professional setting, and it just gave a very meaningful experience. So I think that network that I think business students do so well, they overdo it at times, but I think our history department does an outstanding job of mirroring that in the importance of creating those natural ties and getting those skills, since you can't know it all so when you enter the field, but you certainly can make a connection with someone who's an expert in that particular aspect. So I really appreciate my peers because they're there for you in many respects.
So Jennifer, let me just follow up. Are you saying that you actually still have connections with other former Phi Alpha Theta members that work elsewhere in the field of history?
Absolutely. So Kevin Cabrera just got nominated as the executive director at the Heritage, and so he and I are doing a local collaborative group through the California Museums. They have a research group, and so we see each other here and there just for this ongoing project through the state. So, and I'm constantly in contact just for questions there, and some graduate students are coming to the site now to help implement some of our education programming. So it's constant. I just emailed somebody at COF asking for an oral history. This network's amazing. I can't thank the university enough for setting up student groups that create really lifelong friends. So we certainly studied hard, but now it's time to work together in the field to keep practicing it as best as possible.
Very good. Nicole, Christine, Colleen, any other lessons or advice you want to share?
Yeah, first I would just like to agree with what she said. I mean, it's funny because my boss, the senior historian Gretchen, and I were talking yesterday, and she jokes about it's weird how connected I am with all these different history centers, because like every time she turns a corner, she feels like I have a connection there, and it turns out I do. And that has just served me incredibly well. I'm just going in and making these connections through the programs, but also I feel like the projects that Cal State Fullerton does has been just invaluable to me, because being able to leave Cal State Fullerton, being able to say that I worked on 2 different exhibits and had integral parts in this, and it just really built up my resume so that I could give them I had real substance behind me. And it was interesting because I've been to different NCTH conferences and things like that, and talking to different people about their grad programs. It's amazing that so many grad programs don't have these programs, these special projects that you go out and do, and how much of a giant difference it makes. Because you know, you go out and you're able to put that you worked on Past Perfect, and you know this. And you know, I when I first got to Tahoe, my boss actually at the time said that she looked at my my degree, public history, and was a little bit leery of it, because she said that she finds that a lot of times you don't have the practical experience.
Yeah.
And so she was actually very happy to see that I did have that on my resume.
Fantastic. It's really interesting to hear that both you and Jennifer talk about the importance of connections and the kind of network you have. You both are fairly young, if I can say that, and are just at the beginning of your career, and you already have a network. So I think that's really, really promising and encouraging. Colleen, Nicole, do you have any advice or lessons to share?
This is Nicole. I would say just stick it out, complete your education, even if you don't do something in history, get that piece of paper, get a degree. It can't hurt in terms of finding a job. And then if you do have a passion for history, stick it out in terms of trying to find something within your field, because it's absolutely possible to do what you love. And I just believed that hard enough that it actually worked out for me. I would also say that when you're studying history, if you have professors that are flexible in terms of choosing topics that you're interested in, to do that and to always do what you love, or try to. And all the other stuff is just a means of being able to do what you love.
Colleen.
I guess my piece of advice would be to take all the opportunities that you can to challenge yourself in writing and research. I really didn't learn to write well until grad school, and I didn't go to grad school until I was in my 40s. And I wish I had learned to be a better writer when I was younger. It would have, I think, helped me find my way in my career sooner. So if you don't feel confident in your writing or your research, take all the opportunities you can to develop that skill.
I think that's all good advice. Now I think it's time to hear what those in the audience have to say. Are there any questions you have? I'm not opening up your mics because I don't want to trigger a pandemonium here. But if you have questions, please type them into the chat, and I will then share them with the group and see what we can hear. Shannon has a question. Waiting for her to type. And everyone, please feel free to put in your questions or comments, because this kind of webinar really lives, or really is meant to allow you to offer some feedback. I do want to say this is such an interesting group to have, because you all have jobs that I have to say sound really fun and interesting. I mean, I love my job. I like to teach, but to do buildings in Los Angeles sounds so interesting. To be up in San Francisco and work with these biographies sounds fantastic. Nicole, your job sounds tough when you have a family and you travel that much, but other than that, it sounds like the perfect adventure. And Jennifer, to be so in charge of a place and basically combine management and history in one career. I find all of these jobs really fascinating. Now, Shannon's question here is for Colleen. Shannon actually, well, you can all read it, right? So, I'm actually seeking a career as an architectural historian. What classes would you recommend at Fullerton?
Hi, Shannon.
Colleen.
The classes that I took at Fullerton that were specific to my interests in urban and architectural history were classes that I sort of created for myself. So I found a professor in the American Studies department who had research interests that were well aligned with mine, and sought her out and talked to her a lot, and she sat on my committee, and she agreed to do an independent study with me. And I also was not able to, but I think there were didn't work with my schedule, but I think there were 1 or 2 classes in the American Studies department that were in built environment. But urban history classes also work well if you're interested in working as an architectural historian. And it has been a few years since I was there, so I don't know. There could be classes in the art history department as well that are focused on architectural history.
Colleen, was that Elaine Lebenek?
Yes.
That you worked with? Yes. Okay. Elaine Lebenek is the professor. I remember her. She started with me. Now, a really good question came from Victoria. What culminating experience, thesis, project, or exam? Victoria writes test. What do you think is the most beneficial? And Nicole, you already wrote down thesis. Choose the thesis track. There is a lot to be said for the thesis track, but I would not want the audience to misunderstand the importance of the exam, because the exam is an historiographical essay of 20 to 25 pages that tries to make concise arguments about a bigger field of history. If you want to have research experience under your belt, do well in your research seminar. If you want to have good writing experience, do well in all your coursework, and make sure that you have a good piece of a writing sample. And in most cases, writing samples are best if they are below 30 pages. Nicole, do you remember people really paying attention to the length and to the full extent of your thesis in your job application?
I don't remember. I do remember some comments saying, "Oh wow, that's long," but I don't think that had nothing to do with the job. That was just people that probably never wrote anything that long, you know. So I agree with you that a good writing sample, because when I sent a writing sample, it was only a chapter or maybe even a shortened version of chapter, and when I attended conferences, it was a shortened version of a chapter. So I agree that a good writing sample is 30 pages or less.
Hmm. I also want to remind the audience that the department generally tries to really change the way that theses look. In the past, we've had students write between 60 and 100 pages. Colleen, do you remember how long your thesis was?
I think my thesis was about 120 pages.
Yes.
It was too
I,
long.
cha-
I
I
have
chaired
mixed,
that one, didn't I?
yes, you did.
Yes.
I have mixed feelings about this question.
Hmm.
For me, choosing the thesis was a mixed experience. I chose it because I wanted to, I mentioned earlier that I didn't feel super confident in my writing when I went into graduate school, and I felt that I needed to challenge myself to take on an independent project of that scope and magnitude. So for
Hmm.
me, it was a very confidence building experience. But as my thesis chair will tell you, I struggled because I worked and have a family, and it was just hard. Um, uh,
Hmm.
it was very challenging, and it became the can I do this? Can I get through this? But I did get through it and I did finish, so it felt good to finish that, but in some ways I could have finished 2 years sooner if I had done the exam. So I have mixed feelings about it. I
Yeah.
think it can be good
I
and it
think
can be bad.
Colleen is right. It was a confidence building experience for her, and she did voice these doubts. And I think the only thing that really was different for you, Colleen, was that you were articulate about it, and I think insightful enough to understand the challenges of it. Having seen a good number of theses, the good ones all are these kind of experiences that mix crises with exuberance and success. That is always the case. For those thesis writers who don't feel any worries, any troubles, they are rarely good theses. So, to that extent, I agree that a thesis is good, but it requires remarkable endurance to then actually get it done and get it finished. And Colleen did this remarkably with a lot of additional responsibilities. So this is something where you really have to assess your own, the time and resources that you have available to make this happen. Shannon has another question for Colleen. Does your job require any classes in historic preservation?
I had some formal classes in historic preservation prior to going to graduate school. I participated in USC's summer program in historic preservation, which is an intensive 3-week immersion, really, which was a great experience. You do need to know and understand the basics of historic preservation in terms of kind of Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, that sort of thing. Having classes in historic preservation is a good thing, but when I'm reviewing resumes, for example, to fill positions, someone who doesn't have that background, I don't rule out, if that answers your question.
Well, but you answered another important question, and that is, are you hiring? And here we have learned that you sometimes fill positions. So maybe this is a contact you guys want to write down.
We don't have
Colleen?
we don't have any open positions right now, but I am happy to talk with any of you who are interested in the sort of work that I do, and I'm happy to keep you in mind when we do post positions so that I can let you know that there are positions posted.
Yeah, great, fantastic. Now, Jonathan has a very specific question that I actually need to have explained. Do you believe that students should continue their education and receive MLIS certification? Now, we heard from Nicole, and this is true, stay in school. So yes, continue your education. MLIS certification, I actually don't know what that means.
I can help answer that. The Master's in Library and Information Science, I believe he's asking
Okay.
about.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it would be helpful if you want to work specifically in the archival setting, since there's an incredible amount of overlap of our training to theirs. So it may be quite beneficial in that setting. But again, in my case, I'm working in Past Perfect and didn't require that. Sometimes on-site experience is all you need. So, and you can go to San Jose State and do an online certification if you want to do it at the same time. I've heard wonderful things from colleagues from their experiences through that program, but it really depends if you see yourself specifically, I think, in the archival system only.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. Do we have any other questions? Oh, yes, I think one more. Fantastic. Very good. I want to thank all four of you too for being here and for taking all these questions and really sharing so much of your experience. I think this this really should be required listening for every history student. Maybe we can make that happen somehow. Make this mandatory. I would like that. Let's see. Do we get any other question? Victoria, have any of you considered going on to your PhD? Do you consider it necessary to further advance in your career? Excellent question, Victoria. Thank you. Do any of you think you need to return for a PhD in order to move further up in your position?
That's a really good question. This is Nicole. I do not feel that it's necessary. If I had a PhD, I wouldn't be making more money and people wouldn't respect me any more or less. So in my specific job right now, it is not needed. If I wanted to do something different, then I would consider it. But I'm happy to say that I don't have to do that right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is Christine. I would say, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Christine.
Where I am right now with Wells Fargo, our levels are, how we're divided up are a levels 4 for historian and then senior historian. I'm right now a level 2 historian. I can go up, continue going up on the levels 1 through 4, and 4 being the highest. But if I ever want to be a senior historian, I would have to get my PhD because with Wells Fargo, you can imagine it's a banking company, they're very big on having those credentials. So that would be a requirement for me if I ever wanted to go to the higher level.
Are you thinking about it?
Not right now. I'm actually going to get my my genealogy certification in the spring, so advancing myself in that little bit.
Mm-hmm. So here's another thing I hear from a lot of you, that you really sort of constantly continue your education in a way. That, as corny as it sounds, that lifelong learning motto of Cal State Fullerton, really, it's really true.
Absolutely. I think one last thought on education was that the National Council on Public History, they kind of shared at their conferences that the capstone requirement for most positions is the master's degree in public history. So most careers don't expect you to pursue that PhD route, but I think it's wise that Christine's sharing that there are opportunities that you might want to pursue in your future, so don't ever give up on higher education. But definitely take a look at those resources. The NCPH website has an outstanding job posting page that I encourage the students to take a look at to get a feel for the market, even before you have a chance to apply. So get a feel for which states are hiring, which fields are giving you opportunities, and go through that thoroughly to get a feel for the career opportunities.
Thank you. You actually picked up what I wanted to follow up on, and that is where you guys see positions in your area posted. And would that be with the NCPH for all of you? Christine, when Wells Fargo looks for people, where do they advertise? Do you know?
Yeah, we post everywhere. AAM, NCPH. We just actually just recently went through a hiring, and we posted on all those different places as well as HPub.
Okay. Nicole, does the federal government post with the NCPH as well? usajobs.gov. Thank you.
Yes, correct. And that's also a place to keep an eye out for different jobs as a historian, because there are other historian billets within federal government at different places. So when I have a bad day at work, sometimes I take a look to see what's out there. And typically that's going to be, there's Park Service types of positions, and there's special projects. I have quite a few friends who used to work at the agency I work for, who are working for the Navy Historical Center in DC. So it is another place to keep an eye out if you're interested in working as a historian within the federal government. And then the way that I actually found this job, I think I mentioned that I started, it wasn't an actual fellowship. That's just the easiest way to explain it, because it didn't have the tax status. So, but the way that I found that fellowship was on HNet, Humanities Net. And that's the website I was mining as soon as I was done with my thesis and had energy to put into finding something different. I was on HNet all the time, and they had plugged the fellowship on there. But we may be looking to bring in some people on that fellowship, and that doesn't necessarily mean that a person has to be in Hawaii. We could have people on the East Coast at the archives. I think the Southeast Asia folks I work with may have an interest in some of the libraries and archives in California as well. So if anybody's interested in that, Dr. Janssen, I can forward you any announcements that I see. That'll be a while, but it may happen.
That would be fantastic. That would be fantastic, because Shannon just followed up and shares, I think, my sense of excitement about your job. Now, to clarify, Shannon, Nicole works for an agency in the federal government, right? The particular skills and knowledge required, Nicole, what do you think was the most important skill that made you land that position?
Well, they were looking at, in my resume, what they saw is that I could write very well. So we had a writing sample, which again was just one of the chapters from my thesis. They saw that I had experience conducting research, that I had been to archives, and I knew how to conduct archival research, and the oral history piece helped. And then the funny thing was my thesis topic was on basically resistance during World War II, so men who refused to serve during the war. And I thought when I was applying for this job, which is the U.S. military, that they weren't going to like my writing sample. But the other thing that they admired, or what they liked about me, is a different discipline, right? So they're trying to bring in all different types of people that had those basic skills of knowing how to conduct archival research and to synthesize information and to write about it. So I work with the historians I work with. We even have, I think, a guy from American Studies. They all have very different backgrounds, and I think it's a great way to create an environment where you have a bunch of smart people doing some important things. So
fantastic. Okay, also just to point this out for those of you who are listening, that Colleen shared with us a webpage where you can find jobs in historic preservation, preservenet at .cornell.edu. Okay, I think Shannon may have one more question. No. Craigslist. Christine says Craigslist is also a possibility. I think that's true. I think whenever you look for jobs, you need to look at least for 4 or 5 websites that you systematically research. So I think that's everything in terms of questions. So that seems like perfect timing, because we've hit the 10:30 mark, and I would like to thank all of our contributors here today. You guys did a wonderful job. I learned so much from this. You guys got me excited. I'm thinking about switching careers now. I'm hoping that a lot of students will listen to this down the road and get inspired to do history out in the field. So I want to say goodnight to everyone. Thank you for those of you who stuck around in the audience. And Jennifer, Nicole, Christine, Colleen, it was so good to hear you again. And maybe we'll do this again sometime. So with that, I will say goodnight.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.